Today I'll start the poem The Village Schoolmaster. The Village Schoolmaster is a part of Oliver Goldsmith's long poem, The Deserted Village. Goldsmith was an essayist, novelist, poet and playwright. He was born in 1728 at Pallasmore in Ireland. After graduation, he travelled to Europe and settled down in London. He worked as a writer and with the help of Dr. Samuel Johnson, the greatest literary figure of the English Enlightenment, became famous as a poet. He is best known for his novel The VIII of Wakefield and the play She Stoops to Conquer. The Deserted Village is considered to be his finest poem. I'll give a brief summary of the poem. The poet begins the poem by recalling the vegetated landscape in the vicinity of the school. The poem describes a village schoolmaster who taught an unruly group of children who often played truant and laughed at his jokes to please him. The schoolmaster was stern but kind. It was his love for learning that made him severe with those children who played truant. In a village where there was little opportunity for formal education, the schoolmaster was admired, for he knew the days of the week and could write and calculate. He could measure land boundaries and he knew the days of holy festivals. He could make estimates and continue to argue loudly with important sounding words, even when he had lost the argument. They wondered how his small head could contain all the knowledge he had. The poem is remembered for the formal simplicity of its language and poetic style, and for the sincerity of the emotions and the sentiments that it portrays. It abounds in pictures of village life and contains nostalgic reflection. Let's read this poem about a village schoolmaster. It is believed that this poem is based on Thomas Byrne, who taught Goldsmith when the poet was 6 years old. Beside yon straggling fence that skirts the way, with blossomed face unprofitably gay, there in his noisy mansion, skilled to rule, the village master taught his little school. The location of the school is explained here. The speaker is a person who has been taught by the village schoolmaster. The speaker says that an uneven fence bordered with yellow flowering shrubs ran along the village path. Beside this fence was the noisy school where the village schoolmaster taught. He headed or ruled over this noisy mansion or the school with great skill and undisputed power. A man, severe he was and stern to view. I knew him well and every truant knew. Well had the boarding templars learned to trace the day's disasters in his morning face. He was stern and his manner was severe. A man severe he was. He was a very stern and severe man. His manners were very severe. The speaker says he knew how severe he could be, as did all the other children who also played truant and remained absent from school without permission. Truant means remaining absent from school without permission is called truant. The children knew the schoolmaster very well. By reading his face each morning, they could tell what disasters or misfortunes they would face in school that day. Seeing his face itself in the morning, they can predict, they can say that what all misfortunes will come on their way. Full well they laughed with counterfeited glee at all his jokes, for many a joke had he. Full well the busy whisper, circling round, conveyed the dismal tidings when he frowned. Yet he was kind, or, if severe in aught, the love he bore to learning was in fault. Full well they laughed with counterfeited glee. Why they laughed? The schoolmaster told his class a number of jokes. The jokes were not very funny, but the students all pretended to laugh heartily just to please him. At all his jokes, for many a joke he had, even though their jokes were not having counterfeited glee means not having much delight. Then also they used to laugh. When he frowned or looked angry, they quickly conveyed the fact to each other in a whisper, warning each other that he was in a bad mood. When he frowned or looked angry, full well the busy whisper circling round conveyed the dismal tidings when he frowned. When he frowned or when he looked angry, they quickly conveyed the fact to each other in a whisper, warning each other that he was in a bad mood. Having said this, the speaker says that if the master was stern and severe, it was not his fault, yet he was kind, or if severe in aught, the love he brought to learning was in fault. So, even though he is strict, the speaker says that if the master was stern and severe, it was not his fault. The fault lay in the love for learning that he had, a love that he wanted to pass on to his students. That's why he was stern when they were unruly and when they played truant. So that is the reason why he was strict. He wanted his students study nicely. The village all declared how much he knew. To a certain he could write and cipher too. Lands he could measure, turns and tides presage, and even the story ran that he could gauge. The village all declared how much he knew. The village people, who did not have much formal education, admired the village schoolmaster for all that he knew. They admired him for being able to write and calculate. Cipher means what? To count or solve problems. He can write, he can calculate properly. Again, they also admired him for being able to work out boundaries and the tides, that is, the times and dates of religious festivals. He could say when it is. It was also said that he could make estimates of quantities without actually measuring them out. Without measuring, he will be able to say how much it is. So that much efficiency the master is having. In arguing too, the person earned his skill. For even though vanquished, he could argue still. While words of learned length and thundering sound, amazed, gazing rustics janked around. And still they gazed, and still the wonder grew that one small head could carry all he knew. When it came to arguing and debating, even the parson or the priest conceded or agreed that the village schoolmaster was very good. In arguing too, the parson earned his skill. For even though vanquished, he could argue still, even if he is defeated. Sometimes he is defeated, that time also. He used to use high sounding words and he used to argue like anything. Even when the schoolmaster lost an argument, he continued to argue in a loud, thunderous voice, using long, important sounding words that the others could not understand. So, high sounding words he uses and then say all those loudly. At such times, the village people just stood around and watched him in amazement and wonder. In these type of situations, the village people just stood around him and watched him with great wonder and amazement. And still they gazed, and still the wonder grew that one small head could carry all he knew. And the longer they looked at him, the more their amazement grew, and they wondered how the little head of this schoolmaster could contain such a vast amount of knowledge and information. In this small head, such a vast amount of information, how he can store, where it is stored. The village people used to amaze. Okay, children.